For anyone who's been to a grocery store in the last couple of weeks, you may have noticed something mysterious. Someone or something has stolen all the eggs, or maybe bought them, or maybe made them very expensive, potentially all three. Now the real question is why? Today on Battle Born Bytes, we dive into why eggs are so goddamn expensive, and what happens next. We also look at chaos at the federal level and what it means for you in Nevada, and spin forward and look into our crystal ball to find out what news stories could matter next. For Battleborn Progress, this is Battleborn Bytes. I'm Jacob Solis. Let's rock. Before we get into the Egg-pocalypse, some quick notes. If you enjoyed last week's video, glad you did. I enjoyed making it, but it's a lot of work, and I don't actually live in Carson City. Difficult to make that week to week, so expect videos like that monthly, but they will be coming. Instead, week to week, you're gonna get me in front of a bookshelf talking about the news, but it's your news. It's news for you, handed here in my palms. I don't know. We'll probably cut that. But I digress, because you came here to hear about eggs. So I'm here to tell you about eggs. So you don't need me to tell you that eggs are really expensive right now, but I think the thing to talk about is exactly how expensive they are and just contextualizing how the heck we got here. Nationally, egg prices have soared, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA for hip kids, to over $7.34 per dozen. And some places in Nevada, you're talking about $8 or even $11, depending on where you are, for a dozen of eggs. That's a lot. It used to be $2.50 just for reference if you're trying to buy eggs in southern Nevada as of last November. So the spike has been sudden and fast. Eggs are actually so valuable, there's been at least one major egg heist when someone stole 100,000 eggs from Pennsylvania. How much is 100,000 eggs worth? It's $40,000. The eggs are worth $40,000.
Yeah, well, say we do all that. We're just supposed to walk out of there with 150 million eggs on us without getting stopped? Yeah.
In Nevada, a lot of stores and farms and any other egg-based retailers have actually limited the number of eggs that you can purchase at any one time to prevent hoarding. Probably good. But all this you may have heard because of the H5N1 virus, otherwise known as the bird flu, which is probably what you've heard it referred to as. It's the bird flu. Nationwide, the CDC has reported that about 158 million birds in the United States have been affected by the bird flu. This is backyard, wild birds, and commercial birds since the bird flu and this strain started circulating in 2022. But last week, a new strain of the virus, what scientists are calling D1.1, was found at a dairy farm in Nevada. Now, that's a new mutation of the virus, which had already been circulating since last year, but that variant is called B313. We love alphanumeric signifiers. They never, ever get confusing. Anyways, the Nevada Independent reported this week that there's only 7 confirmed cases in cows in Nevada so far, 1 in Nye County and another 6 in Churchill County. But in an interview with the Nevada Independent, Nevada's agriculture chief, J.J. Goycochea, said that this new strain, now that it's in northern Nevada, could be more difficult to contain than the old strain was when it was in southern Nevada. And I'm quoting him here directly, "We did everything we could to keep B313 out of here, and we did. That strain never got out of southern Nevada. But we can't control wild birds migrating. The new strain literally fell out of the sky." I am refraining as hard as I can from making Chicken Little jokes. I am not going to say the sky is falling. I'm not going to say the sky is falling. The bigger problem, scientists say, is that this could mean that it's easier, or at least easier than they thought, for bird flu to jump from birds to mammals, and specifically from birds to cow. The New York Times interviewed an evolutionary biologist, Louise Moncla, who said, quote, "This is not what anyone wanted to see," which is what I love to hear from a scientist. That has never been uttered by a scientist in a cool and good context. Right now, it should be clear the biggest danger to humans is for dairy workers or people who are working closely with either cows or birds. Up till now, about 68 people have been sickened by the bird flu since last year, and that includes one person who died from the new strain in Louisiana. And just to add on to this, the CDC did announce this week that a dairy worker in Nevada tested positive for the virus this week. Sidebar, really glad nothing bad is happening at the CDC right now. Oh no. Look, economies and egg supply are all very complicated, and I'm not going to get into all that, and we're not going to talk about whether or not they should cull flocks or vaccinate flocks. I'm not going to touch it. But the USDA says basically don't expect egg prices to drop super soon. Right now, projections are sometime during the second quarter they should start to go down and bottom out sometime later this year, in the third quarter. So enjoy your omelet sometime in July, maybe August. For now, all this to say, I hope you enjoy our new egg-based economy. Now is the time of the egg. Gone is the time of the dollar. All hail the egg. Also, just generally, this goes for any episode of Battle Born Bytes. If you want to read more about any of the stories I mentioned, or any of the quotes I talked about, you can find all of those stories linked in the description below. Now for a hard pivot, let's talk about the federal government. Bet you love that. Bet you love talking about the federal government news in this news video. I would be here forever if I talked about everything that's happening, so I'm going to focus on Nevada and how things affect Nevada, because we're in Nevada. This is Battle Born Bytes, Battle Born Bytes. So, for instance, there's a little bit of a court battle happening over this right this second, but let's start with the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH. So the NIH funds a lot of research in the United States, stuff like medical research, scientific research generally. How do we do stuff? I don't know, NIH funding. So in 2023, just to contextualize this, the NIH spent about $35 billion on research grants at literally thousands of universities across the United States and hundreds of thousands of researchers. Of that money, about $9 billion was for indirect costs. Keep that in mind because the Trump administration tried to cut those indirect costs by trying to cap them at about 15% of any given grant. This might not sound huge, but it actually is huge because that money pays for stuff like labs and lab assistants and equipment and stuff. So scientists freaked out, said it could basically devastate the American scientific community, and 22 attorneys general sued the Trump administration to stop it because they wanted it to apply to grants that had already been given. Yoinks. Nevada was among the 22 states that sued, and so far Nevada universities are playing it a little close to the vest. At UNR, for instance, President Brian Sandoval, who, fun fact, used to be a federal judge. Who knew? He told faculty in a letter this week that it could risk up to $4 million if the changes the Trump administration want end up going through. But because of the court battle, paraphrasing here, he just said keep on trucking because no one knows what's going to happen. What will tomorrow bring? Who can say? Next, separately, the Nevada Independent reported this week that tens of billions of dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act are also caught in limbo, and this includes hundreds of millions of dollars in Nevada. That includes stuff like $100 million in rebates for people to upgrade the appliances in their homes to be more energy efficient, and $156 million in solar programs that would have made it possible for people with low or middle incomes to install residential solar. Which, that'll show them. No more solar for you. No, get the sun out of here. Separately, Nevada leaders have said basically that if these federal cuts do go through, it could absolutely devastate the state budget, because about a third of Nevada's budget comes from the federal government. Speaking to the Nevada Independent on Tuesday night, Governor Joe Lombardo said that proposed cuts to Medicaid, for instance, which covers a quarter of all Nevadans, could, and I'm going to quote him directly, be Armageddon. There's also lots of other ways that the federal government cuts could impact you in different small ways that might not immediately be apparent. And I just wanted to touch on one real quick here, and that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or the CFPB. Nothing sexier than CFPB. We love a bureaucratic name. I gotta stop using that joke. We love lots of things. So the CFPB was created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. The whole goal here was to recover funds from corporations with enforcement actions so that consumers who got ripped off could get their money back. Since it was created in 2012, it's recovered almost $20 billion for 195 million Americans, which is a lot of Americans. Now it's been totally gutted by Elon Musk's Doge Goon Squad. Is it because the CFPB had been trying to stop Elon Musk from implementing payments into Twitter? Who can say? Party of small government, everyone. Hard at work. Obviously, that's just a slice of the stuff that's been flying around in just the last week alone. So we may end up needing to dedicate a regular segment of Battle Born Bytes to all this. But if you want to hear more about it, let us know in the comments below. But here on Battle Born Bytes, we're not just about the past. We're about the future.
Future!
And with that in mind, let's roll through a couple stories that are little baby stories, little baby birds of stories that could become large, fully fledged birds of stories. First off, Governor Joe Lombardo asked Democratic lawmakers this week to send a letter to the federal government asking them to release federal land in Nevada for more housing development, which is just really funny because, man, you're the governor. You send a letter. I know you've already sent letters. Just send more letters. Surely another letter would do it. Surely a resolution. That's finally going to tip them over the edge. Second, congressional Republicans are trying to fast track something called the SAVE Act. Now, this would require voters to use some kind of identifying document like a birth certificate or a passport or anything showing their citizenship before they'd be allowed to register to vote. This is not only wild because it would totally upend voter registration across basically the entire country, but also 21 million Americans do not have ready access to these kinds of documents, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. And I ask you, dear viewer, do you know where your birth certificate is? But that does it for this week's episode of Battle Born Bytes. Today's episode was written and edited by me because I'm multi-talented. Just a reminder that we have a new episode of the show up every Friday, so like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things if you enjoy the show and want to see it more. This has been Battle Born Bytes. I'll see you next week.